Consider again Robert Jastrow. The essential elements in the astronomical and biblical accounts of Genesis are the same. The chain of events leading to man commenced suddenly and sharply at a definite moment in time in a flash of light and energy. Recall John Walton. God created significant functions for human existence: time, weather, food. This is strikingly similar to the anthropic principle. Physicists doing physics developed the anthropic principle. In other words, physicists, in seeking to understand and explain how the world operates, concluded that the universe appears to be specifically prepared for human beings to live. I am now convinced of the opposite thesis, that is, that far from being evidence in favor of exotic theories, these coincidences should rather be considered as confirming conventional, general relativistic Big Bang physics and cosmology, which could in principle have been used to predict them all in advance of their observation. However, these predictions do require the use of what may be termed the anthropic principle, to the effect that what we can expect to observe must be restricted by the conditions necessary for our presence as observers. Although our situation is not necessarily central, it is inevitably privileged to some extent. One of the most thought-provoking conundrums in modern cosmology goes by the name of the anthropic principle. This states that however you look at it, our universe appears to be very finely tuned to maximize the chances for biological life like us. There are currently 25 fundamental dimensionless constants required for the standard model of physics, and the ratios between them govern the fundamental interactions of physics, and also the size, age, and expansion of the universe. So here's the big question. How did the universe spring into being so perfectly tuned for life like this? In this way, around 4.5 billion years ago, a highly structured solar system was formed. 8 planets, tens of dwarf planets, hundreds of satellites, thousands of celestial bodies of subplanetary dimensions, and more than 100,000 asteroids. Among these planets, there is one that occupies a particularly privileged position, having been the beneficiary of outrageously good fortune. Here is where I think Brady begins to veer off quite a bit. It's the start of it. Here Brady foreshadows that he'll be discussing Big Bang cosmology. Given that Big Bang cosmology is the prevailing scientific theory of the origin of the universe, it makes Genesis 1:1 seem all the more divinely inspired for having been scientifically accurate in a pre-scientific age, even though the theory does not posit that the universe came from absolutely nothing. More on this later. Alright, several pages later, maybe chapter or two later, Brady now discusses Big Bang cosmology. There is a major assumption in the premises of this argument, the argument being the cosmological argument. Specifically, that the universe began to exist. What we currently understand about our reality is that the universe began to expand at a certain point, and from a certain point. This expansion is commonly referred to as the Big Bang. Before that, all the matter and radiation that is now in the earth, in your body, in the stars, and in the entire universe seems to have existed as energy condensed into an infinitely dense region called a singularity. Now consider this. The Big Bang did not occur at a single point in space as an explosion. It is better thought of as the simultaneous appearance of space everywhere in the universe. That region of space that is within our present horizon was indeed no bigger than a point in the past. Nevertheless, if all of space, both inside and outside our horizon, is infinite now, it was born infinite. If it is closed and finite, then it was born with zero volume and grew from that. In neither case is there a center of expansion, a point from which the universe is expanding away from an origin point. It's kind of nitpicky, but essential to understanding the mathematical sciences. That is, probability and statistics, calculus, and theoretical physics. It's to know your definitions, know what they mean, and know how to use them. So Brady is a little off with his presentation of Big Bang cosmology, as he states that the universe began to expand from a point. That small deviation from what the Big Bang is increases as he builds his case that the Bible is not consistent with modern natural science. He moves farther and farther away from natural science. He gets more inaccurate when describing scientific discoveries. So it turns out that it's cosmic inflation is the model that posits that the universe didn't come from absolutely nothing, not Big Bang cosmology. Cosmic inflation has not quite yet supplanted Big Bang cosmology. There are a number of cosmologists who actually hold to it, but it's like you said earlier, the accepted cosmology is actually Big Bang cosmology. Now consider this. It is beyond the realm of the Big Bang model to say what gave rise to the Big Bang. There are a number of speculative theories about this topic, but none of them make realistically testable predictions as of yet. Guido Tonelli has a much different perspective than those at NASA. The universe, with zero total energy, constitutes an important alternative to the traditional theory of the Big Bang, and renders superfluous the presence of an initial singularity. It is this amazing negative pressure that has subjected everything to an expansion at a grotesquely accelerated speed. This is what the Big Bang originates from. The idea that the universe may have experienced a phase of cosmic inflation is still the subject of lively debate among scientists, even though a considerable majority believe it to be the most convincing explanation available. Here is a prime example of Brady being inexperienced in handling scientific information. He presumes natural scientists will be objective. As often happens in science, it is difficult to get people to give up an established theory, no matter how defective it may be, unless a better one is available to replace it. Brady writes, the prominent cosmologist Sir Roger Penrose has theorized that the singularity that preceded the inflation which led to our universe was actually the end of a preceding dying universe, and that our universe will, in turn, one day die, leaving a similar singularity which might spawn another. Here Brady is referring to Roger Penrose's conformal cyclical cosmology, that the universe experiences iterated cycles. Astrophysicist Ethan Siegel comments about conformal cyclical cosmology. Penrose isn't alone in his assertions. The data is overwhelmingly opposed to what he contends. The predictions that he's made are refuted by the data, and his claims to see these effects are only reproducible if one analyzes the data in a scientifically unsound and illegitimate fashion. Hundreds of scientists have pointed this out to Penrose, repeatedly and consistently over a period of more than 10 years, who continues to ignore the field and plow ahead with his contentions. Siegel continues, Penrose is not just wrong, it's trivially easy to demonstrate that the features he claims should be present in the universe do not exist. Guido Tonelli writes, "The data tells us that the expansion of the universe will not stop. Nothing indicates that it will reverse its flight and head back towards the Big Crunch. The average density of the universe is not sufficient to reach that critical value at which gravity will become the dominant force. Therefore, we have to abandon the otherwise almost irresistible seduction of a cyclical universe and turn to confront again the fundamental problem of how the first singularity occurred." Returning back to Ethan Siegel, Hoyle may have been denied a Nobel Prize despite his worthy contributions to stellar nucleosynthesis because of his unscientific stances later in life. Although Penrose now has a Nobel, he has succumbed to the same regrettable pitfall. Yeah, that section really stood out to me. In the pages leading up to page 298, several times Brady mentioned that certain biblical scholars and others were being intellectually dishonest if they were holding on to certain positions in light of contradictory evidence. And yet here he is using Roger Penrose, who is holding on to a defective theory in view of contradictory evidence. And because it suits his purpose, it's okay. So this is what I mean. He really didn't challenge these natural scientists the way he challenged biblical scholars. Truth be told, Lawrence Krauss as well as Sean Carroll also can be shown that there's some cognitive dissonance as well as some intellectually dishonest positions that they're holding based on their cosmology and different challenges to their models. Well, those are my thoughts about Let There Be Gaslight. While I can appreciate Brady Goodwin's faith crisis and journey, I don't think the book should really worry any believer. Yeah, I didn't find anything that was particularly worldview shattering or anything that led to a particular crisis. So, yeah, the subtitle to his book is "Does the Bible Tell the Truth About Our Creation, Fall, and Redemption?" My answer is yes. Brady has his doubts. I'm sure other people have their doubts, but the truth is out there. It's available for us to be discovered. We can apply that truth to our life. So I say, go do it. And lastly, I'm going to briefly highlight something. The most successful theoretical mechanism for extending the Big Bang has been cosmic inflation, which sets up a phase before the Big Bang, where the universe expanded in an exponential fashion, stretching it flat, giving it the same properties everywhere, matching the expansion rate with the energy density, eliminating any prior high energy relics, and making the new prediction of quantum fluctuations, leading to a specific type of density and temperature fluctuations, superimposed atop an otherwise uniform universe. That was astrophysicist Ethan Siegel. Particle physicist Guido Tonelli writes, if inflation had really taken place, the universe could only be flat. The initial dimensions of the microscopic bubble would have been ironed out and flattened by the furious expansion of the first instance, and only an early universe with precisely zero curvature could have remained flat for billions of years. Notice that Tonelli put ironed out and flattened in italics. He continues, you can get the local curvature of space-time again from fossil background radiation. We simply measure the angular diameter of the small inhomogeneities of temperature difference that amounted to no more than 100,000th of a degree between one region of the heavens and another, descendants of primeval statistical fluctuations. And here, the experimental data flawlessly reproduced the predictions of inflation, telling us that the universe was indeed flat. So note that Tonelli's language of ironed out in the heavens being substituted for space-time, because he was talking about space-time, measuring the local curvature of space-time, and then you measure one region of the heavens from another. What's interesting is that Guido Tonelli is not claiming that the very substance of space-time was literally iron flat, because there was a cosmic iron tool that was pressed against the early universe, like when a person presses their clothes to get rid of the wrinkles. He used a figure of speech as a shortcut to convey the idea that the universe got flattened. He does not go into great detail about how the elementary particles slammed into each other and the effects of their motions resulted in the flattening of space-time. Genesis 1 verse 6 reads, Then God said, Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. The comment about this verse in the Nelson Study Bible reads, for Genesis 1 verse 6, in biblical usage, the term firmament means heavens. Literally, it means something stretched out, like hammered metal, the Nelson Study Bible. Why is it okay for a natural scientist to use figures of speech and non-technical language when communicating to lay people about how the universe is and functions? The book he wrote was a popular book, but the writer of Genesis chapter 1 is precluded from using a figure of speech to communicate to common people, and modern readers have to take the writer's language as literal as he talks about how the world came to be. Why is that the case?